consequence of poor choices that you make. Right? But that's just to correct you, to get you back on track to the ultimate reward. So there is nothing bad that comes from Hashem. Hashem is not evil, and never can be evil. Even if you see the most horrible things, Tzaddik V'Ralo, Moshe struggled with this. Avram didn't struggle with it. Yitzchak didn't struggle with it. Yaacov didn't struggle with it. B'Kel Shaddai, whatever Hashem does, he puts it this way, he puts it that way, I don't care. Avram says, tell me to make an Akedah, I'll make an Akedah. Want me to throw my whole life away? Yitzchak says, yeah, I'll do it. He doesn't care. But Moshe grappled with this. Because Moshe, was the Moshiach Yisrael. He had to have a much deeper understanding of Hashem. And that's what Hashem told him. He said, Moshe, it's time to learn a few lessons here. By the way, believe it or not, the Meforshim say that at this point it was decreed that Moshe would not enter Eretz Yisrael. Can you imagine? Even though all of our other midrashim and everything says that it happened because of the water, it was because he rebuked Hashem, so to speak. And Rachamim2 explains, he says, don't get too Hamish. I may be treating you like my special child with all Hashem treated Moshe with the greatest of kindness, like a son. He says, but don't overstep your boundaries. Watch it, kid. Watch it. You know how the kid gets a little too chutzpahdik. He's going to sit in his father's chair and run around like, roll around like this, or start calling his mom and hey, Pops, or, hey, Jake, what's going on? What's shaking? No, don't you dare ever forget that the loving Father is still the Father. Don't mistake me for a God of Rachamim who has no accountability. There is accountability, and there is Yira. And you have to have Yira and Simcha all at the same time. That's Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael is somehow really great at never being too happy. We're really good at that. You just won $1 million. Oh, you say what's going to be with the tax returns? You're worried. All worried. But where we put it away, where we're going to invest it. And we need a lawyer, we need an accountant. It's a big crisis. Enjoy. Go out, drink a champagne. No. And when we're at a wedding, we break a glass for Churban Yerushalayim. Don't get too happy. Happy, but not too happy. But when we're low, on the other side, when it's Tisha B'Av, we say, Nachem. Console yourself. Don't allow yourself to go to despair. Because Klal Yisrael understands that they are both a child and a servant to Hashem. Im kibonim, rachmeinu karachim aval bonim. Im kavodim, eineinu lechatzuyos. Those coexist simultaneously at all times. This is the lesson that according to Rachamim2, Moshe was being taught. Now, given that introduction, there were certain tzaddikim who were able to literally live within the world of Rachamim. Now, and din at the same time, a complex equation. What do I mean by that? So, just as I mentioned, the story of the beginning of the Abuchatzera dynasty means father of the mat, meaning that they actually can boss around God's world. How did they get that, by the way? They got it because they excelled in a couple of areas. Remember, there are Talmidei Chachamim, and these rabbis were all great Talmidei Chachamim. That goes without saying. Their kedusha was built through learning Gemara and Tosos and Rashi, not only Kabbalah Sfarim. Don't think that. Not true. The bread and butter of what they learned was what they call Nigla, open Torah. But then they delved into the higher realms. Late at night, they'd get up for Tikkun Chatzos and they would learn Kabbalah and they would go as deep as they possibly could into the secrets of the Torah. But they were excellent at Shmirat Einayim. In fact, one of the descendants, Baba David, who died al Kiddush Hashem, he said that he never saw a woman in 40 years, including his own daughter. And it was said about him, and it was said about this member of the Abuchatzera family that his Shmirat Einayim saved a third of the world's judgments. You understand? So what are they essentially? They are the great tzaddikim through their power, through their great piety, their denial of physical worldliness, and the enhancement of their neshama to such a high extent they would fast a lot. This is again not for everybody and not for our generation, but a lot of them would fast, eat very little, learn nonstop, guard their eyes, be on a very, very high level, and then they had the power to mitigate harsh decrees. They could take the Midat HaRachamim and enforce it against the Midat HaDin and sweeten all the judgments no matter how correct they were. Because the RaChamim said, when it came time to cancel the Avdus, even the Midat HaDin agreed. So right, because like I was saying before, when they came to free Rubashkin, every senator in the world signed on, right? Every senator, every lawyer, every congressman. Of course, it was the wrong thing. It was the wrong thing. The Midat HaDin had to say that it was wrong. But obviously, it was an issue of Rachamim. So I'm going to give you a few stories about where these tzaddikim, specifically from that family, stepped in when there was a time of harsh judgment against the Jewish people and did remarkable things miraculously to save the day. So let's take the first story. You ready? First story is this, that Bir Yaacov, who was in Tafilalet, Morocco, that was the area where they lived, towns and villages, and it was southeastern Morocco, by the edge of the Atlas Mountains, right by the Sahara Desert. In fact, they lived in an oasis. So that was their territory. One day, in one of the towns of the area, an Arab killed an Arab boy and wanted to do like a blood libel against the Jews. And who knows what he did to that boy. He lured him out, he killed him in a horrible way, whatever. The Jews did it. And they trumped up charges against the Jews, and they were ready to, the local Pecha sheiks were ready to kill the whole Jewish community. And they came pleading to Bir Yaacov for help. So he says, okay, tell all the judges of that town, the sheikh and everybody, to assemble in the town square and bring the dead boy. And bring everybody. Okay, so here you have the judges of the town, right? The law enforcement, the sheikh, everybody. All of the Arabs, who were no friends of the Jews, by the way. And nothing has changed, right? Their vernacular and what goes on in their house has not changed very much in these last few hundred years. What they say about us. Very happy to see the Jews have Midat HaDin. And he says, get up. He says to the boy, get up. You see on the stretcher, kid gets up. He says, say what happened to you. And he points a finger to the guy that killed him. And he says, this is what he did. This is how he lured me out there and he strangled me or whatever he did. And of course, it's a big uproar. And they're calling for the head of this Arab now, not the head of the Jews. And the father of the boy comes running to Rabbi Yaacov, and says, please keep my son alive. You already brought him back to life. Please pray that he'll stay alive. And he said, I can't do that. The permission that I had was to bring him back to life, just again to save the Jewish people in it. And then the minute he finished his testimony, he died. Or he died again. He went back to being dead, more accurately. He took a little break from being dead. Now he went back. Now that story wasn't a story that happened with two people somewhere in an attic. It happened b'fnei Am ve'eda with hundreds of people, witnesses. You can't get away with making up a story like that. Okay? That means he had a koach of tchias hamesim. You know what that means? We don't know anybody who had koach of tchias hamesim since, it's very rare individuals going back to the times of the Gemara. I mean, this is unbelievable. Okay. Next story. In his area of Tafilalet, there was a new sheikh in town, like new sheriff in town, And he no fan of the Jews, none of them were. And he liked to run around the area of his town to see what's going on. His big horse, which is like a big show of, horses then were the same thing as a Hummer or a tank, driving around his big car. And of course, anybody who sees him, what do they have to do? Prostrate themselves. Arabs are very good at that. But they expected the Jews to do it too, and they're not so comfortable with that. So when the Jews knew that the sheikh was riding about his big horses, they ran for cover because they didn't want to have to bow down to him. They also didn't want to insult him. So Bir Yaacov is sitting outside one store, and he hears the guys coming, and he goes into the store and avoids him. The horses get up to that spot, to the store, and they stop in their tracks. They cannot be moved. No matter how many times the sheikh, his name was Al-Islam, they quote his name, beat the horses, they wouldn't move. Till some kid comes out and says to him, oh, there's the big rabbis in that store. Probably they're afraid to go because of him. So he goes into the store, angry, upset, and then he sees Rabbi Yaacov and he gets scared. He says, okay, you don't have to bow down to me, blah, blah, but please, I need my horses, Can I have my horses back? So he says, I'll do it on one condition. First of all, don't prosecute this store owner, because something happened to him in disrespect in this store, Don't punish him, and don't persecute the people. And he said, okay, and he freed the horses, and that was it. This guy was converted. So now he became a protector of the Jewish people. Do you understand? So ask yourself, it was Midas Hadin, because at that moment, it could have been a tragedy for the Jewish people, right? He could have killed the store owner, could have made a pogrom on the Jews, could have killed who knows how many people. It was a moment of Midas Hadin, but it was really all Rachamim, because what came out of it was that we converted this guy to be a protector of the Jews. So just like Paro became the worst he ever was, although I'm not sure why it's worse than killing the babies, but also the worst taskmaster, let's put it that way, as it were, because killing the babies was also not exactly. According to Midrashim, Paro denied it. He said it has nothing to do with me, and Mitzrayim on their own did it. It was a lot of subterfuge. Havan chak malo. Let's be smart with them. They made believe that they didn't have anything to do with it. They said, oh, really? A kid was killed? We'll send a policeman. We'll take a police report. Bring witnesses. So it was a lot of baloney going on. But here, this was open persecution. And so he transferred. Now, the rest of that story goes that this Sheikh al-Islam was good to the Jews. That made the people around the communities not very happy. They said, any friend of the Jews is an enemy of ours. So a big militia came to take over the town. Said, enough of this guy. We're going to get rid of him. And they sent a pretty big contingent of soldiers, and there was no match for the sheikh had at his disposal, troops, maybe 100 men, 200 men. What did he have? It was a town. And they came with 1,000, who knows how many fighters. And they said, we're taking over the town. And the Jews all ran for cover. They were afraid to go out. And the Bir Yaakov says, time for mincha. Time to go to mincha. Now, every Jew is it's like, Rachmani, you would hide from the Nazis off the street. You don't want to be outside, right? You're vulnerable. So, okay, we have to go to shul now. So his son is like, what are we going to do? Nobody wants to come out. He goes, go get me a minion. He says, what do you mean get you a minion? They're terrified. He goes, don't worry, tell them it's on me. And he gets 8 people shaking and quaking to come into the shul. And they daven. The only thing was that Bir Yaakov davened every Shemona Esrei for 1 hour. So they had to hang out there a long time. And finally, they ran home right afterwards. I said, one guy says, let me see he was just curious, how is this going to, I guess he had so much faith in the Bir Yaakov, he says, this is going to turn out good. Let me pull up a seat and see how this one works out. And he said, let's see what the Bir Yaakov is going to do. What Tfilos is going to do. What Segulos is he going to do. He says, Rabbi Yaakov learned between Mincha and Mar, finished davening Mar. Then he walks over to Aron Kodesh, and he says, Ravana Shalom, am I not Kedai? Am I not worth it to save the Jews of Chafilalet? That was it. He goes and sits down, continues learning, and then notices the guy's there, calls him over and says, go to the sheikh and tell him not to worry, that you'll have a big victory. So he's afraid to go out, but he goes, and in the sheikh's palace, Kimat nobody was there. His 4 main servants were there. Everybody else ran away, like when they came to Paro. And he tells them, you're going to have a victory. Now the sheikh had a belief already in Rabbi Yaakov, right? He knew that what this guy says happens. So they strengthened themselves, and they went out to confront those troops, those enemies, and the enemies started to run for their lives. So much so that they pursued them and killed many of them. By the time he got back to the Jewish quarter, right, this victory had already happened. And so they sent other people to thank him for the victory. So what did he say to the sheikh's guys? He says, oh, you are great warriors. He says, I put the fear of you in them. That if once they saw you, they would be positive that they would be defeated. So the minute they saw you, they ran. By the way, I'll just make an analogy. A lot of the things that happened here in Eretz Yisrael, especially during the Six-Day War, were inexplicable. That, all these big armies just turned and ran against two Israelis, with a rifle. There are a lot of stories like that. There are many, and then you ask the Egyptians, like, what happened here? He goes, why did you let two Israeli soldiers capture a battalion of 1,000 people? He goes, what do you mean? There were only two of you. There were like 10,000 of you, weren't there? We saw 10,000 of you. And they're like, oh, huh? Hashem put the fear into their hearts. So again, the tefillos as the great protectors of the Jewish people. Now, so more stories? You ready for more stories? You like? I'll give you a couple more. I think one of the most important ones, okay, I'll give you one more fun, and then we'll come to the grand finale, okay, because we're almost done. A lot of times, what he would do, Rabbi Yaacov, when he was a great Gaon, he started the yeshivos, he made sure that there were rabbis and shachtim, and he built up the community, built up Torah. He even invented the first dormitory, which is really very interesting. Because even Volozhin did not have a dormitory. Did you know that? Volozhin was operating since the early 1800s, but they had no dorm. You slept on the benches in the shul, or wherever you could. No food, no dining room. You ate by different families. Rabbi Yaakov made a dormitory. And he forced the people, they were scared not to, and they gave him, they gave money, created the door. So he was busy, but he therefore was collecting a lot of money. Any town where he'd go, they would receive him like a king, and they would, Jews of the town. So, so what happened was, on this particular occasion, he was riding his donkey, and he had collected who knows how much money, the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars in gold and so on. And he has this Arab who's walking him with his donkey home from the last village. Now, apparently the last village, there's a shortcut. These are mountains. It's a mountainous area. To cut through the mountains and be home in 10 hours or 8 hours. Instead, you got to go all the way around. It's a few days. So he tells his driver, we're going the shortcut. He goes, no way. Don't you know there's highway robbers there? They sit and wait because this is the only pass through the mountain. Don't you know that we're sitting ducks? I don't care. Let's go. He said, I hired you and you're obligated to go with me. Okay, so they go. And they pass by the village where this same Arab comes from. And he knows that all his friends make a living from this path. That's how they make a living, That's the business. Rob the people on the highway and bring it back to the village. That's how they live. And he's scared and terrified. And he's walking along. Sure enough, he hears his buddies cackling and laughing because they saw from a distance this one donkey with all this money coming, and they know that this is the Abir Yaakov, and they know that he's got the loot, and they're already rejoicing there, and they had guns. This is him. They already had guns. Don't forget he died in 1880. And so the driver of the donkey was like, I'm out of here, and he just got off the donkey and ran. Or he was leading the donkey, I'm not sure, but Rabbi Yaakov was sitting on the donkey with the packages. 40 guys come. And he says to them calmly, yes, can I help you? Could I do something for you? Would you like something? Can I help you? And in Arabic, of course. And they said to them, yeah, we're going to take your money and we're going to kill you. Because what is life worth living if you don't have any money, right? So we're going to kill you. Very matter of fact, they lift their guns to point and they freeze. They sink into the ground up until their waist. Okay? And they're like this, stuck, suspended, like statues. And then Yaakov just, moves on with the donkeys. Let's go home. So he's home in a couple of hours. The guide ran after him and, escorted him. He wanted to get paid, of course. You understand? He wants to get paid. He'll lose his payday. So, he was also very upset that he saw all his friends like this, halfway buried. But, he's got to get paid. So he ran with Abir Yaakov home, got paid, went back to the village, and he was afraid to say anything. Because maybe they'll say that he was part of it, or, they're going to kill him. And we know, and that's what happens in the clans, it's kind of like gangs. If you kill somebody from one family, they're going to come and take Nekama, no matter what. That's the way it works. So after a while, like a day or two, the family said, where's everybody? Where is everybody? We got 40 families without a bread stealer. So what are you going to do? So they send out, they finally go to this guy. They figure out that this was the driver, and they confront him. And they also went to Abir Yaakov, by the way. And he said, no, I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. Then they went back to Abir Yaakov, and they pleaded with him, please, free our relatives. He says, okay, if they promise that they will never attack anybody on the highway again, I'll free them. And they went out there, and they're like statues. And he said, but if you don't go fast, they're going to die. Because remember, they hadn't eaten already in 2 days, and they're frozen. So he looks at them and says, do you agree not to steal anymore? They shouted in their ears, because they were like statues. And they slowly kind of nodded their heads like this. Yes. And he freed them. And they never came back. So that's the protection. One final story of protection. You ready? Can we do one more story? The biggest story of all? After his passing, many, many, many miracles happened on his grave. People were healed. People put shemen and yayin on his grave in Dinhamor, Egypt, which was buried there miraculously because it's a little town. Alexandria is the big town. And they wanted to bury him in Alexandria, except that every time they loaded up his aron, it started pouring. And it never rains in Egypt. And so they realized, they gave up after 4 or 5 times to bury him here. He needs to be here. Later in the Sfarim, it says that this was a place of a very particularly strong avodah zarah of the Egyptians. Like Moshe was buried against Baal Peor to negate it. This was like one of the biggest, destructive forces in the world. He was buried there to negate it, and you'll see how. So many, many stories of all sorts of miracles for Jews and non-Jews that came there to pray for children, for everything. It's a miracle place. But in the summer of 1942, the Jewish people, besides being exterminated en masse in Europe, were about to be exterminated en masse in then Palestine, if you're aware of that. Everybody thinks that Israel began after okay, Holocaust is over, now we'll start Israel. No, it wasn't like that. The Jewish community in Israel was reaching about 500 million people, okay, by 1942. No, not quite. I think it was only, I shouldn't say that. I think it was closer to 300,000. But it jumped up to 600,000 in 1948, but I think that was post-Holocaust. But in any case, there were several 100,000 people living in Eretz Yisrael, Jews. And Rommel was approaching. And he was already at Alexandria. He was already, everybody know what happened? What was the turning point of the war in Egypt that saved the day? You ever hear the Battle of El Alamein? Okay, there were 2 great battles. One was the Battle of Beersheba. That took place in 1917. That's when the British captured Eretz Yisrael with the help of the Jewish Brigade. That was World War I. Schos Avos, right? Avos were in Beersheba. The foolish English were trying to capture through Gaza. Don't go to Gaza. That's not a great place. They're entrenched there. You're against the water. You can't win in Gaza. But Beersheba is wide open. And the Jews convinced the English to go through Beersheba. That was one great war. But the next important war was in 1942. Rommel advanced to Alexandria. They set up the defenses that they called the El Alamein line. El Alamein was like halfway through Egypt. And they had the troops there, and they were davening here in Eretz Yisrael, which I can't go into the whole story, but in a dream, the Abir Yaakov appears to a Mekubal named Alfasi, and these are documented stories, and said, why aren't you coming to pray by my grave? Is it for nothing that I'm buried here? And he went to the British officers. It's a whole story how he got permission. They wanted to throw him out on his head. But one of the Jewish guards, again, the Jewish brigade of the British then in World War II, said, this is a big rabbi, leave him alone. So he got permission to go into the war zone. And the British officer says, yeah, if you think your prayers are going to do anything for this war effort, you got a lot of, that's like the article in Haaretz, you heard about that? If you think your prayers are going to bring rain, you're foolish. And the next day it's a massive thunderstorm. Okay. So he went. He got a minion from Alexandria. They were shocked that he made it through to the military zone. And they went out and they prayed. And they did all sorts of tikkunim. And they felt like a great awe and light and simcha coming to them. And they said, must be something good happened. Well, here's what happened. It was Shivasar B'Tammuz the 15th of Tammuz and then Shivas Tammuz, that the Germans just broke through like they're breaking through a piece of paper. And they stopped because they found water pipes. And in those water pipes, they thought there was fresh water that the British had pumped out there already. It was contaminated water. And they drank it, and they all got sick. And they had to stop. And they couldn't continue. And Rommel went back for a birthday party for his granddaughter. He got permission from Hitler, Yamach Shemo, to take a vacation. Really, this is all true. And they came back. Sitting in Greece was an expert team of stronger than Eichmann's, experts on how to run concentration camps. The deal was already struck between Hitler and the Mufti. The Mufti says, I'll give you the manpower, you tell us what to do. These guys had the technical knowledge, know-how, and capacity to quickly eradicate all the Jews in Eretz Yisrael. It was waning. It was like a technicality. Jews are davening. And so, in the meantime, they appointed this general called General Montgomery, the British, who was a rookie against the greatest general maybe in modern history. Okay? Mashugana. He decided to attack. Yeah, right. Like, you're going to beat him. But guess what? He did beat him back. And this General Montgomery went on to chase Rommel out of the entire North Africa, from Morocco all the way to everywhere that the Abir Yaacov traveled. He was traveling to Eretz Yisrael because he wanted to die in Eretz Yisrael. He made it from Morocco to Egypt, and he stopped everywhere along the way. Montgomery wiped out Rommel from that entire area all the way back to Morocco, and then led the invasion of France, where a lot of their relatives are anyway. So that happened, according to some, simultaneous with the Battle of El Alamein. Well, that battle started when they were davening by his kever. So what do we see? Hashem's midos of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, of Rachamim, are, by choice, incorporated in a system of nature, a system of Elokim. But they're always there, and they always are interacting. There's not two separate things. Today, light on, light off, day, night. That doesn't exist. Hashem's Rachamim is in every single moment. Rachamav, and as good as, if there's any ra, it's because he needs to bring us back to the tov that he wants for us. But it's never ra. Hashem is never bad. And by the way, if I leave you something from this year to take away, whatever a person encounters, anything painful, if you think of it as ra, you got to change your thinking and thank Hashem for it. Do you believe this? This is what Rabbi Shalom Arush says. People come to him all the time for all kinds of problems. Can't find the shidduch, and I don't have a job, and this is Shalom bias, and this is with the kid. So he says, did you thank Hashem today for the problem? He says, what? Thank Hashem? He goes, yeah, did you thank Hashem for the problem? Hashem is not going to help you unless you thank him, because it's really for your good. And if you don't daven that way, he's not interested. Because look, say, when you come to Hashem crying, you're just an annoying child. When you come to Hashem and say, look, I take responsibility, I'm a mature person, whatever you're doing here, I believe it's for my good, I want to straighten things out, let's talk. Who does Hashem want to hear that? He wants to hear that. And he says a story about a girl who had acne, speaking about one of the plagues. And she was crying, she has acne, she can't get a shidduch, blah, blah, blah. So he goes to her, did you thank Hashem for your acne? She says, what are you talking about? Did you thank Hashem that he gave you this? Because this is for your good, because nothing bad comes from Hashem. So she said, I'll do it. He said, do it for 30 days. She did it for 30 days. She found a cure. She got married. So that is the thing. So the summary is, within the Midas Hadin of Elokim, there's always the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei lurking. But we have to be smart enough to know that it's all for our good. And if we reach that level, we can daven for the Yeshua of all of the Jewish people, and Hashem will protect us. In the midst of whatever challenges we're through, we can always access the Rachamim through the power of our Tfilos and emunas ha-Chachamim and Tzadikim.